At the beginning of the movie, we are shown a world that has become more modern, where the field of robotics has advanced greatly. Humans produce artificial life forms called surrogates. Surrogates are realistic-looking robots that are connected directly to the human brain. They are connected to the brain with a device that has more than 100 sensors. When humans sit on a device like a chair, the sensors attach to different parts of the human brain. Through this process, whatever humans think will be done by the surrogates. The experts describe it as controlling a second body through the brain. The inventor of surrogates, named Cantor, created the device to help disabled people live as normal humans. But only 3 years later, the device began to be used in wars to strengthen the military. As more devices were produced, the price became affordable enough for the general public. This event changed the course of human life. People began to use their surrogates to go out of the house and eventually became completely dependent on them. Because of surrogates, people can leave the house without having to physically leave the house, thus minimizing the risk of accidents, robbery, and disease. In addition, people can also change their appearance as they please without having to undergo plastic surgery or exercise. Surrogates will become your new self and will interact with people in your life while you control them from home. Only 7 years after this invention, the largest surrogate company named VSI released a statement saying that currently 98% of the world's population uses surrogates in various aspects of their lives. Humans will live in total isolation and rarely leave their homes. Their substitutes will do their activities outside the home and have become the current lifestyle. Because of the use of surrogates, violent crime, infectious disease, and discrimination have dropped to record lows. However, not everyone likes this technology. There is a minority group that believes that humans should not live through machines. They have established surrogate-free zones in various parts of America and are led by a man named the Prophet. Now it's been 14 years since the invention of surrogates. In short, a young man is on his way to a club. He lies to his father on the phone and says he's going to watch an opera. When he's at the club, he jumps from the balcony but lands safely, showing that he is a surrogate. He then meets a girl while dancing and invites her out. When they are kissing, a man riding a motorcycle uses a device on them to kill them. When paramedics and police arrive, they find that the memory chip of the young man's surrogate is completely damaged, so they can't find his registered owner. But the girl's surrogate is registered with the name Cameron. FBI agents named Tom and Jennifer find Cameron's address and visit her. But when they got to the house, they found that Cameron was actually a middle-aged man who had died while sitting on the device that connected his surrogate. This was the first murder in several years, so the detectives were shocked. The scene then shifted to a subway that was running. Tom went home from work, and we saw that everyone around him was a surrogate. When he got home, he brought water for the real Tom, who looked very different. The real Tom had used a handsome and young-looking surrogate to live his life. After storing his surrogate, Tom walked out of his room to meet his wife named Maggie, but he was greeted by Maggie's surrogate. Tom hadn't met his wife for a long time and only talked to her surrogate. He suggested they go on vacation somewhere, but Maggie preferred to send her surrogate on vacation and experience life through it. Elsewhere, some teenagers found their friend named Gerard dead in his dorm room. The detectives then began to discuss this case. They thought that whatever device was used to kill the surrogates also affected their owners. Such a case was considered impossible until now because the owners shouldn't feel what their surrogates felt. They found out that Gerard was the son of Dr. Cantor, the inventor of surrogates. In short, Tom and Jennifer made an appointment with Dr. Cantor and went to meet his surrogate. They found out that Cantor had used several surrogates at the same time, which was considered illegal. But because he was the inventor, the detectives ignored it. Gerard used one of Cantor's surrogates when he was killed. This made the detectives sure that the killer targeted Cantor and not Gerard. They then went to the largest surrogate manufacturer company to investigate, but the CEO refused and said that surrogates were 100% safe for their owners. Through the camera recording embedded in Gerard's surrogate body when he was killed, they found a picture of the man who killed him. They then met a man named Bobby, who was the computer system administrator for the FBI. He knew that Gerard's killer's name was Miles. Bobby also had access to every surrogate in America and could deactivate them at any time. After finding Miles's location, Tom chased him with a helicopter, but when they were about to catch him, Miles shot a weapon at all the detectives and killed their surrogates. He also injured the real Tom and killed his friend. Their helicopter crashed in a forbidden area filled with anti-surrogates. Before Tom could catch the killer, his surrogate was killed by anti-surrogates. The real Tom was wounded by the weapon, and he then got out of his room and fainted. Then we saw Miles meeting with the prophet, who asked him what he said to Tom. Miles insisted that he didn't reveal any information, but the prophet still killed him. Tom woke up in the hospital and found that he had been suspended for a week for landing in a forbidden area. But he was determined to solve this case. So he went out of the house without his surrogate for the first time in several years. He then went to the forbidden area to meet Miles, but he found his body being cremated. He asked the people there about the weapon that Miles used earlier, but they said they had never seen the weapon. His men then realized that he was a cop and immediately beat him up. Tom then left the forbidden area, and at that moment, a young man offered him a ride home. It turned out that the man was Cantor's surrogate. He asked Tom about the murder case of Gerard. Cantor suggested Tom focus on the weapon and where it came from. When Tom, who was injured, arrived home, he saw Maggie and her friends gathering in the living room. Maggie felt nervous when she saw him, but Tom didn't approach her. Then Tom saw her talking to a man and immediately punched the man. The scene then switched to a man entering Jennifer's house and killing her. Then he took over control of Jennifer's surrogate. The next day, Tom visited the military general and asked about the weapon. The general told him that the weapon was called an overload device. The weapon was made as a war weapon to infect surrogate bodies with a virus. But the officials didn't know that the virus would also kill the original people. After they found out, the production of the weapon was stopped. VSI was the producer of the weapon, and they destroyed every unit. But there was one weapon that was not destroyed. Instead, Tom told them that the forbidden area had the weapon. Then we saw the prophet handing over the weapon to his men to give it to Jennifer's surrogate. On the other hand, Tom then went to Maggie's workplace and asked if she missed their son. It turned out that they had lost their son in a car accident, and Maggie hadn't recovered since then. We then got a glimpse of Maggie's real appearance, which was old and wrinkled. She was still grieving for losing their son. Elsewhere, the military attacked the prophet and his men to take back their weapon. But when they shot at the prophet, who was the leader of the anti-surrogates, they found that he was also a surrogate. The scene then cut to Dr. Cantor in front of his computer, who was monitoring the people there. Here we found out that Cantor was the person who disguised himself as the prophet to stop the use of his own invention. In short, Tom then met with Jennifer's surrogate, who was now controlled by Cantor. She told Tom that Cantor's son had been killed by VSI and their boss named Stone. They had found out that Cantor was trying to stop the use of surrogates, which would cause huge losses for VSI. Therefore, they planned to kill Cantor with the weapon, but they were wrong and killed his son instead. Cantor couldn't bear to think of his son's death and made it his mission to kill everyone who used surrogates, but he needed the weapon and the code to make it work, and Jennifer already had the weapon. She told Tom that Stone was involved in Gerard's murder and asked him to bring Stone's computer files to her as evidence. He then went to see Stone and beat him up. He then downloaded everything on Stone's computer and hurried out. Now Jennifer finally had the weapon and the code, and she had to meet Bobby to induce the virus through the weapon to every surrogate in the world. Tom then realized that Jennifer's surrogate had been taken over, but at that moment, they had an accident. Jennifer then ran towards Bobby, while Tom rushed to the root of the problem, which was Cantor. Jennifer pointed a gun at Bobby and inserted the virus into the system. In a few minutes, everyone who had a surrogate would die. At that time, Tom arrived at Cantor's house and asked why he did all this. Cantor answered that he had created surrogates to help disabled people, not to make everyone dependent on them. Now that his son was dead, he didn't want to let his death go in vain and wanted to end the addiction of surrogates. Shortly after stating his reason, Cantor swallowed a pill and ended his own life. Tom then took over Jennifer's surrogate and asked Bobby how he could stop the spread of the virus. Bobby quickly told him the code, and they managed to save the original bodies of the people. Now Tom had to click yes to save all the surrogates. He hesitated when Bobby told him that they only had a few seconds left. He finally pressed no, which deactivated all the surrogates in the world. At that time, We saw hundreds of surrogates no longer functioning. Not long after, their owners came out of their homes for the first time. Tom then rushed back to his house to see Maggie's real self and found her not in her room. He finally found her in their son's bedroom. Then they hugged each other and the movie ends. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe. Because by subscribing, you have supported me to make better videos. See you in the next video.